What's one thing that Christ, the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, Hermes, Krishna, Lao Tzu, and Buddha all have in common? They embraced being alone because when alone, they heard God. Now, have you ever felt alone on this spiritual journey of elevation? Sometimes you feel like there's no one to turn to and you're the only person in the world that understands you remotely. There's really no one that you can express how you really see the world to and truly bounce ideas off. Now, here's the truth. This is all by cosmic design. You are the black sheep that is meant to be alone. The social hive mind makes being alone seem like something for losers, but solitude is the path for those that are awakened. The caterpillars that are awakened to readily transform into butterflies. And by the end of this video, you will see why the universe purposely, yes, purposely isolates you. Because, spoiler alert, when alone, you have the best conditions to elevate your mind. Being with other people stunts your growth. Now, there's a quote, and I love this, and hopefully it will hit you the same way that it hit me. All of humanity's problems stem from man's inability to sit quietly in a room alone. Now, this profound quote highlights an aspect of humanity that you've shied away from, and that is your discomfort with being alone. Now, that little child within you still exists, desperately seeking to play with others and be a part of a gang. In childhood, being alone is associated with negativity, and so you spend your whole adult life not wanting to feel that rejection. Unless you're an only child like me, well, on my mom's side, so I was practically alone most of the time. Now, here's the thing. Being part of a collective puts your spiritual elevation in a tough spot, because to operate within society, unfortunately, you need a persona, which is a mask. Almost every interaction that you have in society is done while wearing a social mask. And here's another thing. You are just a mask that God is wearing. And to uncover the truth of really who you are, we must take off the mask. Truth be told, the only time that the mask ever truly comes off is when you are alone. And once we fully remove the mask, it puts you in a position to detach from the ego and integrate into the God self. So, in a way, hanging out with people means your mask is on, which means you're not operating from your true self, but an artificial self, which we call the ego. It's kind of like how the most miserable people are those who always need to be around other people. I really feel bad for them. Believe it or not, most people are terrified of being alone. I was always perceptive of this. You know, in people, I could always see that some people really don't like being alone, and I thought to myself, I do not want to be like that. Being alone is such a punishment that even in prison, which is already a punishment itself, inmates are further punished with solitary confinement because they know the average person, when left alone with their mind, will go mad. An undisputable fact is that to be alone is the truest form of bravery. Sometimes you like your own company, and guess what? When it comes to being alone, this is where the true superpower exists. Being alone is what allows you to hear God. Now, another quote from Carl Jung, amazing. The highest form of a human being is to be in solitude with him or herself. When you're alone, the social mask is off and you're truly the authentic self. And it's within this authentic self that the greatest spiritual capabilities exist. This is how you're going to be able to control your reality the way that you want. This is why when you wake up, right, when you come into this knowledge or you begin to see the world a bit differently, it almost makes it impossible for you to truly be comfortable around others. It's like part of waking up. It's disliking being with people in a strange way. Whether you want to call it the universe, God, the God self, higher self, it seems like this force purposely wants you to be alone. And this is because it allows for an elevated perspective on what you need to do to become aligned with God. I have my own quote now. We've spoke about Pascal and Carl Jung. I'm about to drop a quote from Nero. Different frequencies equals different languages, which equals different worlds. And yes, I self-quoted. Being alone presents the opportunity for growth because solitude is an incubation for growth. Part of the growth is self-contemplation, with the aspects of yourself that you have repressed to avoid pain or because they're not liked by society. Oftentimes when you're alone, your demons come out, which is good. Not because it allows you to fight them, because I don't think you should fight your demons. I think you should talk to them, not in a witchcraft way, but understand the aspects of yourself that you categorize as demons, and then through conversation and understanding, you can elevate beyond them. Being alone is almost addictive to a degree because it's kind of like the less you're going to desire for societal approval, which is good because it allows you to detach from the hive mind thinking and to become intellectually independent, which also allows you to attain certain aspects of reality such as wealth. Now, you also, while being alone, become more aware of how people are actually detached from themselves. Like, it's something that you see. If you're comfortable with being alone, then you can almost see it in people. You can kind of see who can be alone, which is a testimony of how much people really know themselves and how much internal growth that they're willing to go through. In states of being alone, you are in silence. And this practice of silence opens the door for you to be conquered by serenity and a sense of inner calm. Simultaneously, silence is the gateway to reality and God, because you create from silence. Once you begin to reconstruct your mind, you have to go into the silence, the inner dimension, because that is the gateway to God. Being alone further presents you an opportunity for self-reflection and introspection, which positions you to properly arrange the bricks of your mind. Because if you want to move into a particular reality, we know by now you must get into the frequency of it. And that frequency is nothing more than a combination of thought forms and emotional energy, which means that you must be the architect of your mind. Because in being the architect of the mind, you build the inner domains, which eventually will be reflected into the outer domains. And this is a question that I truly believe. How can you know yourself if you can't be alone? Deep, right? The universe isolates purposefully to have full control of you molding your consciousness the way that you want. And you should be grateful for that. You should be grateful for the fact that this spiritual journey of elevation puts you alone. Because when you're alone, and I always say this, consciousness is contagious. When you're alone, it allows you to mold your consciousness the way that you want. Because then we know by the mirror principle, which I'm going to make a video on soon, that will be reflected into reality, because it's always been the same thing. 4 words: as within, as without. Now, there is an art to being alone. I mentioned at the start of the video that all spiritual masters, from Christ to Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, to Buddha, to Krishna, Lao Tzu, Hermes, they all embraced being alone. Because in silence is when you can truly hear God. And I always say this to people. People say, oh, you know, what's the point of meditating? I pray. And I always say, prayer is talking to God, but meditation is listening to God. And typically we are in the habit of talking way too much and not listening enough. Now, here's some steps on the art of being alone. Number 1, do not see being alone as a negative. See it as the best positive, because the universe has a more elevated perspective than you, and beyond your ego, which is just seeking approval. I mean, the only reason we don't like being alone is because we associate being alone with something that is reflective of negativity on our ego. But the force that is isolating you, like I said, whether that's God, the God self, the higher self, the universe, no matter what your ego wants to call it, it has a higher perspective than you. So it knows what you need to have the best conditions to grow internally, which will lead to external growth. Number 2, practice sitting alone in daily silence. The amount of time is up to you, but don't make it easy. Don't be an idiot. Don't set it for 5 seconds and then be like, oh, I'm done. You know, challenge yourself, because this also ties into one of my videos, the 4 paths to mastery, right? Self-mastery. Because until you've mastered self, you will not be able to master reality. If you cannot control yourself, you can't control reality to any degree. So practice sitting alone in silence. Get comfortable in the silence, because the silence is where you create from. Within the silence, you access the inner dimension. Think about it. Whenever people pray, they close their eyes to talk to God. Where they're going within. What does that say? Where God is, right? Number 3, capitalize on the time being alone. Use it for introspection, self-discovery, and self-programming. That's what you need to use it for, because here's the truth. And I'll end by saying this: the silent mind can hear God the loudest. Yeah, I appreciate it for making it to the end of the video. Now, for months I've been working on this new coaching program, and it's specifically designed to help people create and construct their reality without the weird new age stuff. So if you're an entrepreneur who is within the 6 to 7 figure range, who's stuck and you've been struggling to break past a certain profit target, I can help you break that profit target in 60 days with reality reconstruction. And that's without no corny, weird new age stuff, hundreds of affirmations and whatever else. So if you're interested in that, check the document in the description. You'll see it. It'll just say reality reconstruction, and it'll take you to a page to explain more about that. And if you haven't already, sign up for the Hacking Reality newsletter. There's thousands literally on it now, and I'm proud to say that. So if you're not already there, make sure you're there. Until then, I'll see you next time, even though time's an illusion.